Welcome to Inspiring Insurance. Our goal is to provide value to the insurance industry through real-life experiences from insurance professionals who have walked the walk. You can expect to hear story sharing, top tips, and practical advice to help you grow and succeed in your career. We hope you enjoy this episode's guest. Welcome back to Inspiring Insurance 2026. We are in Melbourne for our first episode of the year, and I'm really excited to be joined by Alisha Shattos. Thanks for joining me, Alisha.
Thanks for having me, Nathan. Really looking forward to it.
Yay, thank you. Number one off the ranks for the year, so thank you for being the guinea pig.
No problem.
The whole purpose behind these videos is to create a free value add from people who have walked the walk in the insurance industry. So really looking forward to hearing from a lot more guests this year and providing a bit of free content for those in the industry. So Alisha, I'd love for you to start off by just, introducing yourself and what made you choose insurance as a career.
Yeah, perfect. So I've listened to the podcast. I'm not going to say that I didn't choose to be a broker because I did have a choice in it. So, but basically, I've been in the insurance industry for a few years indirectly. So I first started off with a company called TSA, which was an outsourced business, and we had a contract with IAG Insurance. So my role there was a channel manager. I oversaw, I think at the absolute peak, it was around 600 employees. So obviously I managed them, but I also managed the relationship with the stakeholders of our IAG side. So, it gave me a really good insight into what kind of things the insurers look for when it comes to claims from a higher level around their KPIs and performance, but also it gave me a lot of experience around, the client feedback and what other brokers in the industry went through when they were doing claims management. So that's how I kind of entered into the industry. Now I'm an insurance broker for One Ledger Insurance. So I moved across to One Ledger Insurance originally from the channel manager position as their general manager. And they had just started up an insurance part of the business because I've been doing accounting for 12 years. And they had a broker on the account who was fantastic. I learned a lot from him, but he was based in Sydney. So logistically, with us being in Melbourne, it didn't really quite work out. So they needed someone to step in and support him. So that's where I kind of put my hand up and said, yep, I'm interested in this, happy to do it. I'll support him. So I worked with him doing admin. And then when the decision was made that they were going to look for another broker, that's where I kind of put my hand up and said, hey, I'm actually really enjoying this. I would love to be the primary broker. And that's how I chose to be in the broking industry.
Yeah, nice. And what was it around, when you're at your time in TSA/IAG, what was it specifically about broking that drew you into making, a bit of a pivot in the industry?
It's a bit of a funny story, actually. My main stakeholder at the time, so I did about 1 to 2 years managing the intermediated claims. And this is when I had my first ever exposure to brokers. And I remember if there was any feedback about our team from a broker, it was a pretty big deal, right? Because we had to keep the brokers happy. So at the time, I just remember, the minute a broker's name was mentioned, I'd be like, oh my gosh, we need to get on this, we need to fix this. So to me back then, brokers were this big, scary, insurance expert that knew everything and needed things done. So back then, I didn't look at that and be like, that's what I want to be. It wasn't until I actually worked with the broker that worked at One Ledger originally where I was like, wow, broking's fantastic. You're translating something that insurance is super confusing, right? So you're translating that to business owners and making it really simple for them to understand. And that's where I went, I want to do this. I want to make insurance as fun as it can be for my clients, but more importantly, simplify it and make it easy for my clients to understand.
Yeah, nice. I love that. And so you came over to One Ledger, you came into a GM type position. What did your day-to-day look like as a GM in the brokerage, so of an accounting firm?
Yeah, so I was a GM, not so much of the insurance side, GM of accounting. So, like your HR management, performance discussions, client feedback, staff feedback, all of that sort of thing. But then where it transitioned is I started supporting in the insurance space part time. And that looked like a lot of client phone call follow up. So just like calling client, being like, hey, where are you up to with your proposal form? Calling insurers sometimes and being like, we need a certificate of currency, just your real admin part of the insurance space. And the part I enjoyed most was probably the business development side. So we have accounting clients across the board, all different industries. And that's how we've built the insurance side is obviously we're sort of a one-stop shop here at One Ledger. So for me, the part I enjoyed was kind of going out and talking to those clients and saying, like, we're now offering insurance, like we can look after you in this way as well. When was the last time you looked at your policy? And yeah, that's kind of what a day in the life looks like. A bit of business development too.
Yeah, amazing. And so you've actually only been broking for the last kind of 12 months or so then?
No, probably around 2 years. But I've been fully qualified and the primary broker on the account since for around 12 months now.
Yeah, nice. That's awesome.
Yeah. So how that I guess fell into place, assuming that was what you're going to ask, is the Sydney-based broker went his separate way. We partnered with another broker here in Melbourne, and he has his own brokerage, but he came on board and basically trained me for the first couple of months. So the broker we had in Sydney, his entire book got transferred across. And I've just been working through that, renewing all the clients, adding new clients into the book, which has been exciting. And obviously at the start, I had the training, which was good. But it's now I'm the day-to-day broker. Fast forward to 12 months' time, and I'm the main point of contact. I'm doing the renewals, new business. So it's very, very busy and a lot to learn quickly, but it's been really fun.
Yeah, amazing. And what were your biggest challenges in those first 12 months of being a broker? Did you come across any roadblocks, any obstacles?
Yeah, I'd say the biggest learning obstacle for me, and this is something I'm still working through, is that I'm not a specialized broker. So, it's not where I might only manage strata clients or construction clients, or I don't know, white collar. It's more so that I'm with an accounting firm. So, there's a very broad range of industries I work with. Like if you name a business, we've probably got it in the book. So I think my biggest challenge has had to be that I can't specialize in one type of insurance policy. They're always different. However, that has been a fantastic learning opportunity because I've had to very quickly, learn all of the different industries. And I think the challenge to that as well, though, is that whenever I'm talking to a new client, doing a quote, it would definitely take me longer than most brokers because, I've got to go through all of the wordings, go through everything in detail. And naturally, I am a bit of an overthinker and I can be a bit paranoid. So, it's not just like I'll see the quote, look at the numbers and do a quick review of the cover. It's making sure I can explain all aspects of it. So then I'll review it and be like, okay, what's the worst thing that could happen to this client? How would the policy respond? And then if I can't find the answer, it's a phone call to the underwriter and saying, hey, play devil's advocate here with me. Like, what could go wrong? So yeah, that's probably been the challenge. Obviously, being new to the industry and having so many different industries I work with in my client book, and learning as I go, but had a lot of support. So I'm very grateful for all the underwriters who have spent a bit of extra time with me, and also the two brokers that I've worked with too.
Yeah, great. So it sounds like I guess because you're a generalist broker, you've got to constantly be staying on top of all of the different products that you're selling. Is there anything that you do to maintain that product knowledge or to further your education? Do you do anything either inside or outside of work to maintain that?
Yeah, one thing I've been doing is definitely staying across the news for all industries. So, following different types of industries on social media, seeing what sort of stuff they post day to day, one thing that really helps is actually following businesses and seeing, the footage they put up of just their day-to-day work. Also, talking to underwriters. I think if you're in, one thing I will say is what I've noticed in the broking industry, it's very dependent how much you're going to succeed is based on the relationships you build. And I think from what I've seen so far, if you're a new person coming in, it's really easy to kind of get caught up in the fact that everything's automated, right? So we have all of these systems we can jump into and do a quick quote, and if you put all the info in, the system generates it. So you're not talking to an underwriter, which yes, it's good, it's quick, but you really need to, I think, pick up the phone and speak to people. I think that really helps you stay across the industries you work with, because if you call an underwriter, they might ask you a few more questions. They will then start talking about, a claim that they had last week, and that's why they see this risk differently. And that's how it's easier to stay across certain things. The second thing I'd say that helps me stay across a lot of industries is really talking to my clients, like not just emailing them and saying, hey, here's your renewal. Pick up the phone, go and see them. In-person meetings are huge. See their operations, see where they're working from. Make sure that you're almost a part of their business, and you could really describe what they're doing.
Yeah, nice. And when you're out on those client visits to, I guess, grow your knowledge about the industry, what sort of questions are you asking those clients to deep dive into where the industry is at?
Yeah, good question. Mostly, I like to ask them about their competitors. I just think that it's a really easy one for them to talk about. So I'll say, what's something that, or I'll say, I normally ask them who their biggest competitors are, what do you think you do differently to them? And then I try and delve into that. Additionally, I'll tend to ask them things like what their goals are for the next 5-10 years, what some of their biggest challenges are that they've overcome. And then I guess the broker part of me will start asking questions around their risk management, like what they're doing to mitigate risk in the business and in their day-to-day operations.
Yeah, amazing. And then following that meeting, so you've gathered all this data, you've understood their business, you've understood where the industry is kind of positioned. What do you then do with that data to benefit yourself as a broker?
Well, firstly, I just make sure I try and absorb it, retain it. And then I like to discuss it with underwriters. I think, it's one thing to kind of fill in something, and don't get me wrong, I definitely use the insurer portals, but it's one thing to kind of write and input all the data in. But I find when you have to talk to an underwriter and they're asking you questions, you're a lot more present in the conversation, right? So you can comment on it more and it kind of sticks with you. The information really sticks with you. So that's how I stay across the industries. And I think it also helps that naturally I am a curious person. Like growing up, my family tell me that I was always saying, but why? Whenever anyone did anything, I'd just say, why are you doing that? Why are you doing that? What's the go with this? What's happening here? So I think that has also helped.
Yeah, amazing. So just always be learning and always be curious.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, nice. From your 2 years in broking, what from your opinion, what do you think separates a good broker from a great broker? Or sorry, the other way around, a great broker from a good broker?
Yeah, I think, like I said, like making sure you're a part of your client's business, and something that I really try to make sure I'm doing all the time and that's been really front of mind lately is, yes, you've got to advocate for your client. You want to put the best case forward to the insurer, but it's also our job, I think, to point out any risks that we see. Like, if a client comes to me and says, this is what I'm doing, here's my proposal form, here's all the information, blah, blah, blah. If I just take that straight to the underwriter, they're going to most likely poke holes in it. They say, what's happening here? This is a concern. Whereas now what I'm doing is I do my initial review and then I'll play devil's advocate and try and put my underwriter hat on the best I can and start to pressure test things, go back to my client and say, hey, this isn't adding up, or can you elaborate on this? Or, am I understanding this correctly? Or it reminds me of a lesson I learned, I guess, the hard way, if I can share quickly.
Yeah, of course.
was doing a quote for a client, and the business owner had told me that they were doing XYZ for their operations. Sent it through to underwriter, and the underwriter came back to me with a screenshot of the client's social media page, showing that they were actually doing ABC, not XYZ. And in that moment, I was just like, it's just a bit of a light bulb. I was like, wow, like, how did I not think to check their social media? Like, that's something now I always do, is whatever information a client gives me. Yes, I always want to make sure that, I trust my clients, of course, but you need to pressure test it. We need to do our checks, because the underwriters are going to they're going to go through it with a fine tooth comb. So you may as well beat them to it and talk to the client first and just understand it all properly.
For sure. It's such a very a valid point there. I think just in this era that we're in of social selling, whether that be for insurance products or non-insurance products, I think the stats are something like 80 to 90% of people will view someone's profile on some sort of social media platform before they purchase a product from them, or that they try and apply for a job with a business. Like, everyone is searching everyone these days. So yeah, it's interesting that you're doing that as well when you're trying to sell insurance products. So it's really good.
Yeah. Well, I just remember I was just so taken back when, I was so confident the client was doing what they told me. And then, the underwriter just thought, oh, I'm just going to have a look at their advertising on socials, and, they're advertising these additional services that they didn't disclose. So, it's a good little pressure test, I think, that you can do. And of course, you want to be open with your client, and just, it's mostly an education piece. Like, hey, this is the sort of stuff you need to be telling me about. But yeah, social media, it's got a big place in the world now. To your point, even if a friend says, oh, let's go here for dinner, the first thing I do is look it up. And I go, oh yeah, looks good.
Yeah, absolutely. So you said in your intro something that you've really liked about being a broker is the business development side of things. There's been all this talk around the softening market over the last 12 months. So when you started your broking career, you probably kind of, I guess, dabbled in this new softening market that we spoke about. How have you found the role of the broker has changed due to the softening market since when you started as to where we are now?
To be really honest with you, I haven't, when I've done policy reviews, I wish I could say I was always saving my clients money, but I would actually say probably 8 times out of 10, I'm going back to them and saying, hey, the insurer thinks they're on a risk that is very different to what you're actually doing. Or, hey, like, the information you've given the insurer reflects the business that was 5 years ago. So for me, it's actually been more so I've been identifying a lot of gaps and educating my clients around that. And it has been hard to have conversations with them. And, I've had to tell some clients that, this is the new quote. It's going to give you adequate cover, but it's actually going to cost 3 times more than what you're paying. And that has not always been a fun conversation. But what I've found is that when I genuinely understand what the key risks are and what the main gaps of cover were compared to, maybe their prior policy, it's just making sure you explain it to the client. Like, the minute that I sit them down and say, okay, these were the gaps on the old one versus the new one, it's not a conversation around price. Like, it's a conversation around their protection. And I think going back to your question around what makes a great broker versus good broker is that, we're not here to sell a price, especially if you're working with business owners who have worked years to build something. They want to protect it, and it's important that they know that they're covered.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, nice. Love it. And it brings me on to my next question for you, which is around value and the value of an insurance broker. So can you share any memorable either claims or client situations that reinforce the value of broking?
Yeah, I this week, actually, I can't go into too much detail because obviously client confidentiality, but I had a client who had their insurance policy managed elsewhere for a couple of years. And, they came to me and said, I'm not having the best experience with my broker. Like, don't know their name. They just were unhappy.
Yeah.
I did an initial policy review, and we found that the way the risk had been rated wasn't completely, again, true to what they were doing. So what I did is I spent the time, we reviewed it, went to market, I made sure I understood what the client was doing. And we actually had to it was a lot of back and forth to get the right cover and to find the right, I guess, policy for this client. But at the end of it, he said to me that, he actually understands his cover. And he was like, normally I get this email once a year saying this is the new price, confirm nothing's changed, like very transactional. And he said, now I'm confident that if something happened, I actually understand what my cover goes to and where it ends. So I've had a lot of feedback like that, which has been really nice. And like something else I've really tried to do is, well, not trying to do, something I do is I have multiple touch points with my clients, not just a conversation once a year. Like, I had a client call me yesterday and say, hey, I've just hired 2 staff. And, it wasn't even really an in-depth technical chat. It was more like, oh my gosh, congratulations, business is growing. And I had to prompt them like, so what's our new updated revenue looking like? And, it's just being their number one cheerleader almost. Like the minute something goes wrong, the minute that they grow or they have a new service or have more revenue, more stuff, like they need to be telling us that so that we can go and make sure they're still covered.
Yeah, amazing. And it brings me on to my next question, actually. This is like flowing beautifully, which is around relationship building within the industry, such a fundamental of the role. How do you build trust and, I guess, long-term relationships with your clients?
With my clients, I think honesty has been the key part. I also think in any industry, really, when you work with clients, it can be really easy to like put off hard conversations and kind of sugarcoat things. But at the end of the day, I think if you're direct, you're honest, it goes a really long way with clients, and just making sure that you take the time to really explain things. Like the minute that it changes from a conversation of price into education, the engagement from the client will always increase. And then I think to your point, in the industry, it's important you've got relationships, not just with clients, but with underwriters. I think really taking the time to just talk to them and pick up the phone and call them. Like, I'm a very firm believer in phone calls. I hate emails. I'll do it for the paper trail. Don't get me wrong. Also very important. However, I would much rather a quick phone call, talk it through than, just back and forth emails. So yeah.
Yeah, amazing. I completely agree with you. Our industry is the same. It's very relationship driven, and it's just so much easier to build rapport, build a relationship with people by picking up the phone or sitting down and having a coffee. Both ways. Emails aren't great.
No, definitely not.
Yeah.
Not at all.
Are there any skills or traits that you think have contributed to your successes your first couple of years as a broker?
Yeah, I think the fact that I am an overthinker definitely helps. And that's only from a perspective where, sometimes I will spend hours and hours just on one policy because I was just like, okay, well, what if this happens to them, or how the policy respond? And it's just all of these like made up scenarios and just kind of practicing in my head and checking. And, so I think overthinking is very exhausting, but I found a job where I can put it to really good use, which I like. The second biggest one I think would be probably communication. I do think that for you, that there's a lot of brokers in the space, right? And you need to build really good relationships with the underwriters and the insurers because they help you, like aside from your personal service, the product part, they can really help you with that too. And I think that something I learned from an underwriter actually is that if you're honest with them at the start and you give them all of the information they need, if an underwriter doesn't have to come back and probe you as a broker and say, okay, well, what's this on their social media? Or, you said that they're doing this, but, this is saying this and all of that. If you just tell an underwriter upfront, like this is the risk, or, here are some of the things that the business can actually improve on risk-wise, the underwriter will appreciate honesty. It goes a long way. And the other thing I will say is if you're going and getting multiple quotes from multiple different underwriters, the ones that you don't place the policy with, just say thank you to them. Just a quick email, quick call. Thanks for your time to quote. We've gone elsewhere, and give them the feedback as to why you went elsewhere, because that helps them at the end of the day.
Sure. And I guess you also never know when you're going to need to go back to that specific person again in the future as well.
Yeah, exactly. And how awkward would that be? Hey, I know I don't reply to your last quote that you scrambled together super quick for me, but hey, I've got another one. They're not gonna, you need to manage that relationship.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. What advice would you give to someone who's considering a career in broking?
I think create your own brand would be my main advice. I think that in this day and age, everything is just so automated. Like emails are written by ChatGPT. Everyone sounds the same. I just think be authentic in the industry. Like as long as you're following the process, taking the time to do a proper review and understand the policies in your client's business, just have a real relationship with the people that you work with, genuinely have an interest in what your client's doing, and have an interest in what the underwriters view as a risk. Like you need to, in my opinion, you need to find insurance interesting to succeed in it. Start building your network now. So get in touch with some brokers who have been in the industry for a longer time, quite some time. Ask them for a coffee. They're not, no one's going to say no to someone young who's new to the industry just wanting to learn. So don't be afraid to start conversations with insurers, with brokers, with underwriters, and business development managers of insurers as well is a good person to catch up with. But yeah, just get your name out there and start talking to people, meeting people, because relationships will get you far in the industry.
Yeah, amazing. Well, Alisha, thank you so much for being the guinea pig of 2026, being our first guest for the year. We're going to end this episode. I'd love you to give me a question that you would like to ask the next guest on Inspiring Insurance. I know I've just put you completely on the spot here, but what would you like our next guest to ask? Something of interest.
Oh, I like this. It's a good little technique. Does it need to be broking related or just in general?
Just insurance in general, yeah.
Insurance in general. Probably, I'd like to know how they think AI will impact the role of a broker over the next couple of years.
Yeah, cool. I love it. I will definitely make sure that one is front of mind for you.
Thanks. Look forward to hearing it.
No worries. Well, thank you so much. This has been really, really fun. Look forward to watching your career. You're still only a couple of years into the broking space, so lots of a big journey ahead of you. So thanks so much, Alisha.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. A big thank you to our guest, and we hope you found some value from this episode's chat. If you enjoyed the episode, be sure to send it to a mate and hit follow so you don't miss what's next. I'm Nathan Anning, Director and Insurance Recruiter at Impact Talent Australia. Catch you next time.